Duan Ling Tian saw it. At this moment, above the void directly over his head, 600 ancient horned dragon phantoms had gathered. Merely by a sword concept, it drew upon the power of heaven and earth to form 600 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Fifth level advanced sword concept. Initially, Duan Ling Tian was muttering to himself, but then his pupils couldn't help but contract, and his face showed shock as he exclaimed in surprise. Duan Ling Tian never expected it. Just by glancing at the sword character on the mountain wall, such a significant change had occurred within him. Not only did he gain new insights into 2 sets of heaven-grade advanced sword skills, but even his previously comprehended 9th-level intermediate sword concept had instantly transformed into 5th-level advanced sword concept. He had crossed a full 6 levels in one go. Even the profound array probably isn't this abnormal, right? As he murmured, Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched, and his gaze instinctively fell upon the sword character on the mountain wall once more. With just one glance, Duan Ling Tian felt a sudden heaviness in his head, and his vision involuntarily blurred. Humph! Having been prepared, Duan Ling Tian's hand, resting on his thigh, suddenly pinched it hard. The sharp pain instantly refocused his gaze, bringing him fully back to his senses. After regaining his clarity, Duan Ling Tian dared not look at the sword character again. Who on earth carved that character? Even a martial emperor expert probably doesn't possess such a method, right? Duan Ling Tian gasped, feeling a bit unnerved. He found that as long as he looked at the enormous sword character on the mountain wall, his vision would involuntarily blur, as if the sword character possessed some special magic. I've scoured the memories of the reincarnated martial emperor from his 2 lifetimes. He hasn't just never seen anything so bizarre, he hasn't even heard of it. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered as he murmured to himself. According to the reincarnated martial emperor's memories, in an era even more ancient than his first lifetime, there were many experts above martial emperor realm's 7th level on the Cloud Continent. But even among those experts, he never heard of anyone possessing such a method. Just carving a sword character on a mountain wall allowed my comprehended 9th-level intermediate sword concept to break through to 5th-level advanced sword concept in one go. Moreover, it can even guide my sword skills. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath. At the same time, with a flick of his hand, the sword concept he was about to dissipate condensed again, merging with the elemental energy that had just surged within his hand. In an instant, the elemental energy formed a 3-foot green blade, surrounded by solidified sword chi, emanating waves of unparalleled sharpness. Simultaneously, above the void over Duan Ling Tian's head, beside the resolidified 600 ancient horned dragon phantoms, another 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared. This was precisely the heaven and earth phenomenon formed by Duan Ling Tian as a void transformation stage 6th level martial artist, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth with his elemental energy. 9 dragons inch glow flash. Duan Ling Tian's eyes slightly chilled, and the 3-foot green blade in his hand suddenly shot out, as if an extension of his arm. What a wondrous feeling! As this sword strike shot out, it gave Duan Ling Tian a feeling of divine assistance, as if he had now mastered the 9 dragons inch glow flash to its absolute peak. Everything felt so natural. Swish, 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 swish. As Duan Ling Tian's sword shot out, the elemental energy, imbued with sword chi, swelled up, instantly transforming into 9 divine dragons, clawing and roaring as they pounced towards the mountain wall on the other side. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The eyes of the 9 divine dragons flashed, and 18 ultimate inch glows shot out, piercing through the mountain wall like decaying wood, leaving 18 deep, bottomless, dense small holes. Duan Ling Tian, seeing this scene, was completely dumbfounded. He seemed to have no idea when the 3-foot green blade, shimmering with sword chi, had disappeared from his hand. I've cultivated the 9 dragons inch glow flash to the perfection stage? After a while, Duan Ling Tian reacted, and his breathing became incredibly rapid. The Nine Dragons Inch Glow Flash, a heaven-grade advanced sword skill inherent to the 7th transformation of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign Art. This sword dragon transformation is divided into 4 realms: beginner, minor accomplishment, major accomplishment, and perfection. When cultivated to the perfection stage, one sword strike unleashes 9 dragons, with 18-inch glows simultaneously, piercing through everything with destructive force. It's that sword character again. After another moment, Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, trying to suppress his surging emotions. My 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash was originally only cultivated to the minor accomplishment stage. One sword strike would only unleash 3 dragons. But just now, after being influenced by that sword character, a mysterious black shadow appeared in my mind, guiding my sword skills, and my 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash actually advanced to the perfection stage in one go. In Duan Ling Tian's opinion, this was truly unbelievable. If someone else had told him this, he wouldn't have believed it even if he were beaten to death. But now that he had experienced it himself, he had no choice but to believe it. And there's the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art. Soon, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but recall the actions of the mysterious black shadow in his mind earlier. After demonstrating the 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash at the perfection stage, the mysterious black shadow continued to act, skillfully integrating the 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash into the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art. 9 swords shot out, 81 dragons appeared, and 162 ultimate inch glows swept out overwhelmingly, leaving no escape. Without any hesitation, Duan Ling Tian raised his hand, and the Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit Sword appeared. Immediately after, when he activated the splitting and merging array, one sword split into 9 swords, which he controlled with his spiritual power, circling around his body, constantly rotating. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian's eyes turned cold. 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art. In an instant, Duan Ling Tian controlled the 9 swords as much as possible, intending to make them all shoot out simultaneously, demonstrating the greatest power of the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, dreams are beautiful, but reality is cruel. In the end, only 5 of the 9 Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit swords revolving around Duan Ling Tian's body shot out, like 5 Duan Ling Tians attacking simultaneously, with overwhelming momentum. Although slightly disappointed, Duan Ling Tian's mood was not affected. Having been prepared, with a thought, he controlled the 5 swords to perform the 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash. Originally, he was a little apprehensive, because he had only seen the mysterious black shadow integrate the 9 Dragons Inch Glow Flash into the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art and use it. This was his first time attempting it himself. But when he saw that the 5 swords shot out by the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art, each unleashed 9 divine dragons, totaling 45 divine dragons appearing simultaneously, a look of joyful surprise couldn't help but appear on his face. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 48 divine dragons, 45 pairs of eyes flashed, condensing 90 ultimate inch glows that shot out like rain, leaving 90 dense small holes on the side of the mountain wall. Every small hole was bottomless, which showed the power of the ultimate inch glows. Who on earth left that sword character? Duan Ling Tian, having re-merged the 9 Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit swords into one and put it away, once again took a deep breath and at the same time, instinctively looked towards the sword character on the mountain wall. Having let down his guard, his gaze blurred, and he was once again drawn to the sword character on the mountain wall. In his eyes, the sword character continuously magnified. Immediately after, he heard the familiar voice again, a faint voice entering his ears, explaining the profound principles of the sword to him. Of course, many things within it he couldn't understand, as they were simply too abstruse and difficult to grasp. Unbeknownst to him, Duan Ling Tian came back to his senses. No change. It seems that not every time I immerse myself wholeheartedly in that sword character will lead to a breakthrough. After once again communicating with and manifesting his sword concept, and seeing no change in the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head, Duan Ling Tian shook his head, not feeling surprised. His sword concept was still at the 5th level advanced sword concept. Even though he had immersed himself in the sword character again just now, he hadn't made any noticeable progress. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, his gaze immediately falling on Feng Tianwu nearby. Boom! A vast flame surged from Feng Tianwu's body. Above the void over her head, the power of heaven and earth stirred, quickly forming a heaven and earth phenomenon. A total of 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. 9th level advanced fire concept. Originally, Duan Ling Tian was a little apprehensive. He was genuinely worried that Feng Tianwu, being completely immersed in that sword character, would disregard the power originating from her fire spirit body and forcefully communicate with and manifest fire profundity. But when he saw that Feng Tianwu's fire concept remained stable at 9th level advanced, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Soon, Duan Ling Tian noticed that the flames rising from Feng Tianwu's body began to compress from top to bottom. Finally, they were compressed into a sword shape, transforming into a sword-shaped flame. At this moment, Feng Tianwu was completely enveloped by the sword-shaped flame, as if she had transformed into a fiery red giant sword. While emitting a scorching aura, she also radiated strands of increasingly powerful sharp energy. Sword concept. Soon, Duan Ling Tian detected a familiar aura, the aura of sword concept, from the sword-shaped flame around Feng Tianwu's body. Although it was only low-level sword concept, it still greatly astonished Duan Ling Tian. Before this, Tianwu didn't even comprehend sword force, did she? Duan Ling Tian's heart trembled, and he immediately realized that the change in Feng Tianwu was due to the enormous sword character on the mountain wall. Who on earth left this sword character behind? Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, his gaze once again shifting to the mountain wall, but he didn't look at the sword character. Instead, he scanned the surroundings, seemingly searching for something. Finally, in a corner beside the sword character, he discovered some smaller characters, also carved into the mountain wall. Wind-sweeping clouds. Without any hesitation, Duan Ling Tian flew out, and in a moment, he arrived before the smaller characters on the mountain wall, gazing at them intently. At first glance, Duan Ling Tian instinctively looked at the signature in the bottom right corner. Sword Saint, Feng Qingyang, Sword Saint. After seeing this signature of the line of text in front of him, Duan Ling Tian's pupils constricted. This person called Feng Qingyang really has a big mouth. How dare he call himself a sword saint? In Duan Ling Tian's opinion, anyone who could be called a saint must be an extraordinary existence. Sword saint. Someone who dared to call himself that must have profound attainments in the way of the sword. If that sword character, which seems to be full of magic, was truly left by this Feng Qingyang, then even if he calls himself a sword saint, it would be well-deserved and not an empty boast. Duan Ling Tian murmured to himself as he looked at the 5-character signature in front of him. After all, that seemingly simple sword character not only allowed him to instantly comprehend the 5th level advanced sword concept, but also helped him cultivate the heaven-grade advanced sword skill, 9 Dragon Inch Flash, to the perfection stage and integrate 9 Dragon Inch Flash into the 9 Tribulations Imperial Sword Art. Of course, he knew in his heart that the sword character only looked simple, but in reality, every stroke contained the profound truths of the sword Tao. Perhaps, only a strong individual whose attainments in the way of the sword have reached a certain level can carve such a sword character. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Soon, Duan Ling Tian came back to his senses, moved his gaze upwards, and began to read the dense lines of text. The text was left by the signatory. On the eve of my ascension, this saint left the Tao martial saint land, traveled the 4 seas, visited continents dominated by mortal realm Tao cultivators, and continents co-dominated by mortal realm Tao cultivators and mortal realm martial cultivators. Finally, I arrived at this continent dominated by mortal realm martial cultivators, the Cloud Continent. In all three mortal continents, I have left my lifelong insights into the way of the sword for those who are destined. If one can obtain half of my insights, in the future, traversing the Tao Martial Saint land, and even ascending, will be effortless. The lines of text ended here. Below was the signature. Sword Saint. Feng Qingyang. That sword character was indeed left by him. Although he was mentally prepared, Duan Ling Tian still couldn't help but gasp, completely shocked. That mysterious and unpredictable sword character actually contained the insights left by this so-called sword saint, Feng Qingyang, his lifelong insights into the way of the sword. No wonder it could help his sword concept improve by a full 6 levels in one go. Also, this Feng Qingyang refers to himself as this saint, and he comes from something called the Tao Martial Saint land. Furthermore, he said he has visited 3 mortal continents, one of which is the Cloud Continent. The Cloud Continent is a mortal continent. Duan Ling Tian frowned, his face showing confusion. According to him, he seems to have also visited 2 other mortal continents similar to the Cloud Continent. It seems that this world is much larger than I imagined. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian tried hard to suppress his turbulent emotions, trying his best to calm himself down. According to the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, all around the Cloud Continent are endless, vast seas, which even he found difficult to explore deeply. Adding the Sword Saint Feng Qingyang's message, in this world, the Cloud Continent is very likely just the tip of the iceberg. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian's breathing couldn't help but quicken again. In other words, in the vast and boundless ocean, besides something called the Tao Martial Saint land and the Cloud Continent, there are also 2 other mortal continents similar to the Cloud Continent. Mortal Continent. Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator. Mortal Realm Tao Cultivator. Duan Ling Tian's face was filled with confusion as he speculated up to this point. Martial Cultivator, he could still understand. It meant martial artist. Tao Cultivator, he had heard the black-clothed middle-aged man who transformed Zhao Ming into a human demon puppet mention it before. At that time, the black-clothed middle-aged man revealed the origin of the talismans in his hand. It was then that he learned that the 3 talismans left by his cheap father were Tao talismans drawn by some Saint Realm Tao cultivator. That black-clothed middle-aged man is not from the Cloud Continent. Moreover, he also called me a Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator. Could it be that he, like the Sword Saint Feng Qingyang, also comes from that Tao Martial Saint land? Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, speculating further. What Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator, Mortal Realm Tao Cultivator, Saint Realm Tao Cultivator, Human Demon Puppet, and what mortal continent? Tao Martial Saint land, Ascension. Chaos. It's too chaotic. As he speculated further, Duan Ling Tian felt a headache. He found it difficult to sort out this information. Forget it. I won't think about it anymore. As long as my strength improves, I will naturally have the opportunity to reach that level. Then, everything will be clear. It must be said that Duan Ling Tian was very open-minded and quickly cast all this troubling information to the back of his mind. However, one thing is certain. The person who left this text and that huge sword character is very, very strong to an unimaginable degree. Duan Ling Tian had no doubt about this point. Sighing, Duan Ling Tian left the side of the mountain wall and returned to Feng Tian Wu and Xiong Quan's side. His gaze immediately fell on Xiong Quan. Currently, the sword concept emanating from Xiong Quan's body was releasing waves of sharp aura, soaring into the sky. However, above his head in the void, the heaven and earth phenomenon formed by the convergence of heaven and earth energy was still 200 ancient, horned dragon phantoms, without any change. It seems that Xiong Quan's current situation is the same as when I was attracted by that sword character for the second time. The sword character did not help me break through again. Only the first time I was attracted by the sword character did I experience a significant breakthrough. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Of course, this did not mean that looking at the sword character later was useless, but rather that the effect was not as exaggerated as the first time. Just now, when he looked at the sword character for the second time, Although Duan Ling Tian's sword concept did not break through again, the sword character still taught him many things. However, those were all extremely obscure and difficult to understand pieces of information for him at present, and he temporarily found it difficult to comprehend them. He had an incredibly strong intuition. If he could comprehend those obscure and difficult to understand pieces of information, his sword concept would rise to a higher level, and it wouldn't be as simple as just 1 or 2 levels of improvement. This sword character is simply more abnormal than that sword concept fragment. No, even a sword profound truth fragment probably doesn't help sword cultivators as much as it does. Such a thought inexplicably popped into Duan Ling Tian's mind. This secluded canyon is simply a paradise for sword cultivators. As he murmured to himself, Duan Ling Tian looked around the canyon, only to find that the entire canyon was located deep within the mountains, and even the sky above the canyon only revealed small gaps. These small gaps were all small openings revealed at the intersection of branches and leaves of the dense mountain forests. The light in the entire canyon shone in through these small gaps. If I were flying above, unless I used my spiritual force to conduct a carpet search, otherwise I definitely wouldn't discover this canyon. Of course, if Duan Ling Tian really passed by here unknowingly, he definitely wouldn't use his spiritual force for a carpet search. This was just one of countless secluded mountain areas in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and it was difficult to attract anyone's attention. If it weren't for Xiong Quan's hometown being here, Duan Ling Tian wouldn't have stopped here at all. Furthermore, this canyon, besides being accessible by flying in and out from above, there is only that one-line sky entrance, which is usually obscured by the jungle. Today, if Xiong Quan hadn't led the way, even if I passed by outside, I probably wouldn't have known of this canyon's existence. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but feel a little fortunate. He never expected it. This time, returning to find Xiong Quan and help him repair his dantian, he would also encounter such a fortuitous encounter. That sword character on the mountain wall inside this canyon, if one were to truly consider it, it might be more precious than all the fortuitous encounters I've had in the past combined. Duan Ling Tian had no doubt about this point. The reason he thought this was naturally because of the message left by Feng Qingyang, who called himself the Sword Saint. Feng Qingyang's message, though not long, implicitly conveyed his power in every word and sentence. If that Feng Qingyang wasn't boasting, he was very likely in existence who once stood at the pinnacle of that Dao martial saint land. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said, if one obtains half of the insights into the way of the sword he left, then traversing the Dao martial saint land, and even ascending, will be effortless. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Boom. Suddenly, a loud bang came, completely disrupting Duan Ling Tian's current thoughts and attracting his gaze. Duan Ling Tian looked towards the source of the sound. There was where Feng Tianwu was standing. Now, the sword-shaped flames on Feng Tianwu's body were continuously rolling and burning, and the sharp aura emanating from the flames was still continuously rising. This aura. With just one glance, Duan Ling Tian's pupils couldn't help but constrict. Heavens! What did he discover? At this very moment, his extended spiritual force clearly sensed. The sword concept emanating from the sword-shaped flames on Feng Tianwu's body had actually transformed from low-level sword concept to mid-level sword concept. And it wasn't just an ordinary mid-level sword concept. 7th level mid-level sword concept. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian subconsciously raised his head and looked at the heaven and earth phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head in the void. Beside the 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms, there were 80 ancient horned dragon phantoms circling there, winding down, lifelike and imposing. Sword concept, comparable to the power of 80 ancient horned dragons. It was precisely 7th level mid-level sword concept. Feng Tianwu, who had never even comprehended sword force before, instantly grasped 7th level intermediate sword intent because of the sword character on the cliff. It was shocking. Duan Ling Tian's eyes gleamed as he was once again astonished by the sword Saint Feng Qingyang's methods. Just carving a sword character on the cliff caused such a significant change in him and Tianwu. If he hadn't experienced it firsthand and witnessed it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. Soon, as if sensing something, Duan Ling Tian's pupils suddenly contracted, and his face was filled with shock. At this moment, he was horrified to see. Above Feng Tianwu's head, the power of heaven and earth surged, and the natural phenomenon continued to change. At the same time, the aura emanating from the sword-shaped flames on Feng Tianwu's body became increasingly sharp. As the flames soared into the sky, it seemed as if they could pierce through the heavens. 8th level intermediate sword intent. 9th level intermediate sword intent. Duan Ling Tian watched the changes in the natural phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head, his pupils contracting one after another, the shock on his face never fading. Besides the natural phenomenon, his spiritual energy also detected that the sword intent permeating the sword-shaped flames on Feng Tianwu's body was strengthening every moment. 2nd level advanced sword intent. When he discovered that Feng Tianwu's sword intent had risen to such a level, Duan Ling Tian was completely moved. How is this possible? Even Xiong Quan, who had already comprehended sword force before, only grasped 1st level advanced sword intent after being guided by the sword character on the cliff. Tianwu, who hadn't even comprehended sword force before, how could her improvement be greater than Xiong Quan's? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp. He remembered that when Xiong Quan's Dantian was crippled, he seemed to have already comprehended subtle sword force. But even after being guided by the sword character on the cliff, he only comprehended 1st level advanced sword intent. Could it be that because everyone's comprehension is different, the sword character on the cliff provides different levels of help? For a moment, Duan Ling Tian could only think this way, and what was happening before his eyes seemed to be the only explanation. Other than that, he really couldn't think of a second possibility. However, soon, Duan Ling Tian's idea was cruelly shattered by reality, making him realize that the whole matter was not as simple as he had imagined. 3rd level advanced sword intent. 4th level advanced sword intent. 5th level advanced sword intent. Duan Ling Tian was completely numb as he sensed the changes in the sword intent on Feng Tianwu's body with his spiritual energy and watched the changes in the natural phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head. Finally, the aura of sword intent stopped changing, and the power of heaven and earth above Feng Tianwu's head finally returned to calm, and the natural phenomenon completely solidified there. The sky full of ancient horned dragon phantoms, winding down, lifelike, brought a visual shock. There were a full 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. This was just the natural phenomenon displayed by Feng Tianwu using fire intent and sword intent to draw upon the power of heaven and earth. The two intents combined, once unleashed, were comparable to the power of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. 9th level advanced fire intent was comparable to the power of 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Therefore, Feng Tianwu's sword intent was precisely 9th level advanced sword intent. Even I, guided by that sword character, only raised my 9th level intermediate sword intent to 5th level advanced sword intent. Tianwu, from a martial artist who hadn't comprehended sword force, quickly transformed into a martial artist who comprehended 9th level advanced sword intent. Even if Tianwu's comprehension is stronger than mine, it shouldn't be this much stronger, right? This is too exaggerated. Duan Ling Tian's heart was surging with emotions, unable to calm down for a long time. Feng Tianwu, who had never even touched sword force before, under the guidance of the sword character on the cliff, instantly comprehended 9th level advanced sword intent. What exactly is going on? Duan Ling Tian was completely puzzled. He could almost confirm now that it was definitely not a matter of comprehension. Just then, Feng Tianwu woke up. Such powerful strength. Is this sword intent? After Feng Tianwu woke up, she stretched out her arms, and the sword-shaped flames surged, as if turning into two giant swords burning with flames, causing the air to emit waves of scorching heat. Tianwu, how did you do that? Suddenly, Feng Tianwu heard the voice she had been dreaming of, and for a moment, she couldn't help but come to her senses. After the sword-shaped flames on her body receded, she smiled and looked towards the source of the voice. Feng Tianwu looked at Duanling Tian and smiled faintly, as if she could captivate all beings, causing Duanling Tian to lose himself for a moment, as if he had forgotten the important matter. "Brother Duan, what did you just ask me?" It wasn't until Feng Tianwu's gentle and pleasant voice reached his ears that Duanling Tian jolted, fully awake, and said with a wry smile, "I was asking about your sword intent." Sword intent. A hint of confusion appeared on Feng Tianwu's beautiful face. Try to unleash your sword intent, and then look at the natural phenomenon formed by the power of heaven and earth it draws. Perhaps, even you don't know what level it has reached now. Duanling Tian said. Feng Tianwu nodded obediently, then prepared to unleash sword intent as Duanling Tian had instructed. Suddenly, as if sensing something, Feng Tianwu's delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly. At the same time, Feng Tianwu's delicate eyebrows relaxed. The next moment, flames surged around her, emitting waves of scorching heat and hot gusts of wind that blew towards Duanling Tian, causing him to squint his eyes. He felt a little strange. Didn't he ask Tianwu to unleash her sword intent? Why did she unleash fire intent? Almost at the same time, Duanling Tian felt strange about this. A sharp aura began to emerge from the surging flames around Feng Tianwu, causing the flames to transform into sword-shaped flames. Ninth level advanced sword intent. When Feng Tianwu saw the 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appearing above her head, she was also stunned, unable to recover for a long time. Although she could feel that this sword intent she had comprehended was not simple, she never expected it to be so powerful. Ninth level advanced sword intent. It was already on par with the 9th level advanced fire intent she had comprehended. Tianwu. At this moment, Duanling Tian seemed to have noticed something and looked at Feng Tianwu with a solemn expression. "I noticed that you first unleashed fire intent before unleashing sword intent. I wonder if that was intentional, or if you had no choice but to do so." After Duanling Tian asked this question, he stared at Feng Tianwu intently, seemingly eager to know the answer. "I don't know what's going on either. However, if I don't unleash fire intent first, I can't connect with sword intent." Feng Tianwu's delicate eyebrows furrowed again as she recalled the scene just now. Sword intent seems to have been born from fire intent. Indeed. Upon hearing Feng Tianwu's reply, Duanling Tian's eyes flashed, and he was completely certain. Just now, the process of Feng Tianwu unleashing sword intent felt somewhat familiar to him. That feeling was just like how he could only unleash fire intent after first unleashing wind intent, with the latter being born from wind intent. "Brother Duan, do you know why?" Seeing this sudden realization in Duanling Tian's eyes, Feng Tianwu couldn't help but ask curiously. "Tianwu, if I'm not mistaken, your sword intent was born from fire intent. Moreover, as long as you unleash fire profundity, you can also give birth to sword profundity of the same level from it." Duanling Tian said with a solemn expression. As he spoke, a hint of envy clearly appeared in the depths of his eyes. Although he didn't know why sword intent could be born from fire intent, all of this was ultimately due to the sword character on the cliff. That sword Saint Feng Qingyang is truly extraordinary. To be able to allow Tianwu to give birth to sword intent from fire intent. Duanling Tian couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He knew in his heart. Tianwu giving birth to sword intent from fire intent, and her comprehending sword intent separately were two completely different concepts. In the former case, as long as fire intent improved, sword intent would also improve accordingly, without the need for separate comprehension. In the latter case, she would need to comprehend it separately herself. This was similar to the method he had mastered through the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign Art, Roaming Dragon Transformation, where he could give birth to fire intent from wind intent. His fire intent also did not require separate comprehension. As long as wind intent improved, fire intent would also improve accordingly. In the future, once he comprehended wind profundity would also give birth to fire profundity. Boom. Just then, Duan Ling Tian felt an even hotter aura rush towards him, and he realized that the flames on Feng Tianwu's body had surged, and she had unleashed fire profundity. First level Emperor rank fire profundity. Above the void, the power of heaven and earth surged. The 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms, which were formed by the 9th level advanced fire intent, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth, quickly transformed into 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Is Tianwu trying to give birth to sword profundity? Duan Ling Tian's gaze narrowed as he guessed Feng Tianwu's intention. The next moment, the increasingly surging flames on Feng Tianwu's body swept out, transforming back into an even more vast sword-shaped flame, pointing directly at the entrance and exit above this canyon. At the same time, above Feng Tianwu's head, the 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms, which were originally formed by the 9th level advanced sword intent drawing upon the power of heaven and earth, also transformed into 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Sword profundity. After unleashing the first-level Imperial Stage Fire concept, Feng Tianwu used it to give birth to the first-level Imperial Stage Sword concept. The two first-level Imperial Stage concepts combined displayed power comparable to that of 4,000 ancient horned dragons. Tianwu. Seeing Feng Tianwu truly give birth to the sword concept from the fire concept, Duan Lingtian was surprised, and with a serious expression, he warned, "Unless absolutely necessary, don't communicate with or unleash the fire concept again." At this moment, Duan Lingtian's extended spiritual energy could clearly sense the agitation of the power derived from the fire spirit body within Feng Tianwu, as if it was about to burst her body. Instantly, he felt concerned and his face showed anxiety. He didn't want Feng Tianwu to perish. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words and seeing the anxiety on his face, a happy smile appeared on Feng Tianwu's pretty face, and she then nodded obediently. At the same time, her fire concept dissipated, and along with it, the sword concept also dispersed. This is incredible. After dispelling the two concepts, Feng Tianwu's pretty face was filled with astonishment. Who left behind that sword character? It actually allowed me, a martial artist who hadn't even comprehended sword force in the past, to instantly comprehend a sword concept of the same level that could be born from fire intent. Feng Tianwu herself was undoubtedly even more shocked by her experience. There's a piece of text over there. Go read it, and you'll know who left it behind. Duan Lingtian glanced at the corner of the mountain wall where the sword character was carved, reminding Feng Tianwu. At the same time, his heart was filled with shock. I wonder how that sword character integrated the sword concept into Tianwu's fire concept. Could it be because Tianwu has a fire spirit body? Duan Lingtian secretly speculated. Otherwise, why wouldn't that sword character integrate the sword concept into my other concepts? Or is it because Tianwu hadn't even come into contact with sword force before, so this sword concept she comprehended automatically integrated into her fire concept? Duan Lingtian speculated again. This was also a possibility. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Feng Tianwu's autumn eyes suddenly lit up, and she immediately looked towards the side of the mountain wall, not far away. Her gaze was quickly drawn to the text, which was too far away to be clearly seen. Whoosh! Feng Tianwu moved, soaring out like a fire spirit, arriving before that side of the mountain wall and carefully examining the text on it. That passage of text was exactly what Sword Saint Feng Qingyang had left behind. Like Duan Lingtian, Feng Tianwu, after reading the entire passage, also felt an inexplicable shock. Cloud Continent. Is it just a mortal continent? Martial artists on Cloud Continent. Are they mortal realm martial cultivators? Dao Martial Saintland. Ascension to immortality. Feng Tianwu's pretty face was filled with astonishment. Compared to Duan Lingtian, she was even more bewildered, completely at a loss. After all, Duan Lingtian had at least come into contact with a being suspected to be from the Dao Martial Saint Land, the black-clothed middle-aged man who had transformed Zhao Ming into a human demon puppet. From the black-clothed middle-aged man's words, Duan Lingtian learned the origin of the 3 talismans his cheap old man had left him, and also some information about the Dao Martial Saint Land, such as talismans being Dao talismans, and that they were drawn by some Saint Realm Dao cultivator. Whoosh! At this moment, Xiong Quan, who had been completely immersed in the sword character on the mountain wall, finally awoke, letting out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted. His face was filled with bewilderment. What do those few sentences mean? Xiong Quan frowned, mumbling to himself, as if pondering something. He had a hunch that as long as he understood the meaning of those few sentences, his sword concept would surely improve further, and not just by 1 or 2 levels. Xiong Quan, a voice came, causing Xiong Quan to shiver and fully wake up, while instinctively looking towards the source of the sound. There stood a handsome and elegant young man in purple clothes. Young master. Facing this purple-clothed young man, Xiong Quan dared not neglect him in the slightest, respectfully calling out, "Xiong Quan, how did you find this place?" Duan Lingtian asked curiously. In his opinion, Xiong Quan being able to discover this place was not only a great fortune for Xiong Quan himself, but also a great fortune for him and Feng Tianwu. In fact, as long as anyone came here in the future, they could obtain a great fortune. Within this canyon, the huge sword character on the mountain wall could be considered a priceless treasure, and to a certain extent, it could change a person's life. Leaving others aside, just take Xiong Quan. Normally, with Xiong Quan's comprehension, it would be almost impossible for him to comprehend void transformation concept. But because of this sword character on the mountain wall, Xiong Quan instantly comprehended the first-level high-grade sword concept, and even stimulated his potential in the way of the sword. In the future, let alone comprehending higher-level sword concepts, even sword concepts might not be impossible for Xiong Quan to comprehend. That sword character on the mountain wall helped Xiong Quan complete a metamorphosis. According to Sword Saint Feng Qingyang, as long as we comprehend half of the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character he left behind, it will be enough to traverse the entire Dao Martial Saint Land. From this, it can be seen, whether it's me, Tianwu, or Xiong Quan, we have only comprehended the mere surface of the sword Dao insights contained in the sword character he left behind. Duan Lingtian could easily guess this point. Young master, facing Duan Lingtian's inquiry, Xiong Quan respectfully replied, "I discovered this canyon half a month ago while hunting in the mountains. After entering, I was immediately drawn to the sword character on the mountain wall. When I woke up, I realized that my original 7th-level low-grade sword concept had transformed into a 1st-level high-grade sword concept." Recalling the scene at that time, Xiong Quan's face still couldn't help but show a look of surprise and joy. Duan Lingtian nodded, then raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Xiong Quan, you had already comprehended 7th-level low-grade sword concept before you found this place? It seems you haven't been slacking off these years." Xiong Quan always wanted to have the opportunity to continue following young master in the future and help young master solve problems. Therefore, Xiong Quan naturally dared not slack off. Xiong Quan said seriously, his words coming from the bottom of his heart, causing Duan Lingtian's heart to tremble and fill with warmth. "Now that your Dantian has also been repaired, your cultivation will soon recover. From now on, you can continue to follow me," Duan Lingtian said with a smile. "Thank you, young master." Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Xiong Quan's eyes lit up, and he hastily expressed his gratitude. He had originally thought that even if his Dantian was repaired this time, his cultivation hadn't improved, so young master might not let him stay by his side. He hadn't expected young master to take the initiative to ask him to stay. This made him ecstatic. "Besides you, does anyone else know about this place?" Duan Lingtian asked again. 10 days ago, I brought Erhu here once. I originally wanted Erhu to comprehend the sword concept using that sword character, but I didn't expect Erhu to just look at the sword character and then faint, remaining unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights before waking up. When Xiong Quan said this, a hint of guilt appeared on his face. "Fainted?" Duan Lingtian was a little surprised. After pondering for a moment, he guessed the reason. It should be a problem with spiritual energy. Air whose spiritual energy is only at the origin core stage, making it difficult to withstand the sword Dao insights contained in that sword character. As for Xiongquan, although his Dantian was crippled and he lost all his cultivation, his spiritual energy was not affected at all. It was still at the void prying stage level from back then. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, "Brother Duan, do you think the message from Sword Saint Feng Qingyang is credible? In this world, there are actually two other mortal continents similar to Cloud Continent that we don't know about, and also that Dao Martial Saint Land." At this moment, Feng Tianwu returned, looking at Duan Lingtian, her pretty face filled with astonishment. "Tianwu, whether it's credible or not, it's up to you. As for me, until I've traveled to every corner of this world, I can't say it's not credible," Duan Lingtian said slowly. Feng Tianwu nodded, agreeing with Duan Lingtian's words. This mountain wall with the sword character carved on it. Duan Lingtian's gaze fell on the mountain wall, not far away. After his eyes flashed, a crazy idea arose in his mind, and he immediately flew out. Whoosh! In his hand, a sword appeared out of thin air. It was a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. Whoosh! As Duan Lingtian flicked his hand, a sword light shot out from the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword in his hand, sweeping towards the side of the mountain wall where the sword character was carved. Brother Duan wants to separate that side of the mountain wall and take it away. Seeing Duan Lingtian's actions, Feng Tianwu guessed his intention. It had to be said, this plan was very crazy. However, she asked herself, even if it were her, as long as she reacted, she would do the same. Judging solely from the sword concept, she could now give birth to by relying on the fire concept. The mountain wall with the sword character carved on it could be called a priceless treasure. Unfortunately, sometimes good ideas don't necessarily come true. Clang! The sword light that Duan Lingtian shot out landed on the mountain wall with the sword character, but it seemed to hit something hard, not even leaving any traces on it. Clang! 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 Duan Lingtian, somewhat unconvinced, struck with his sword from various tricky angles, but found that he couldn't damage the half of the mountain wall near the sword character in the slightest. Unless I move all the mountains here, but even if I could move it, my storage ring isn't big enough. Duan Lingtian was somewhat troubled by this. Even an Emperor-grade spirit weapon level storage ring couldn't hold such a large expanse of mountains in front of him. Not to mention, the spatial ring at the Emperor-grade spirit artifact level couldn't hold this entire mountain range in front of us. Even if it could, Duan Lingtian doesn't have a spatial ring at the Emperor-grade spirit artifact level right now. Only an Emperor-grade artifact forger can refine a spatial ring at the Emperor-grade spirit artifact level. To become an Emperor-grade artifact forger, Duan Lingtian still needs his cultivation to break through to the Martial Emperor stage and be able to condense Emperor-grade pill fire with his elemental energy. Of course, there are several spatial rings at the Emperor-grade spirit artifact level in the Great Treasure left by the Reincarnation Martial Emperor. Duan Lingtian, who had thoroughly searched the Reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories regarding the Great Treasure, naturally knew this very clearly. However, why is this half of the mountain range, inscribed with the character's sword, so much harder than the other half? I also didn't sense any aura or fluctuations of inscription formations on it. It's truly strange. Duan Lingtian casually struck the other half of the mountain range with his sword, leaving a bottomless crack, as if slicing tofu. Yet, the half of the mountain range inscribed with the character's sword seemed to be imbued with some magical power, making it difficult to damage. At the very least, the current Duan Lingtian found it impossible to damage. It seems it's related to Feng Qingyang, who left the character sword. Duan Lingtian murmured, easily guessing the reason. Forget it, let's just leave it here for now. Duan Lingtian sighed helplessly. When I need it in the future, I'll come back here to observe this sword character and comprehend the sword Dao insights contained within it. What a pity. At this moment, Feng Tianwu also seemed to realize something, exhaling like orchids and sighing softly. Unlike Feng Tianwu, Xiongquan was already dumbfounded by the heaven and earth phenomenon above Duan Lingtian's head. Young, young master. After a long while, he finally called out to Duan Lingtian somewhat unsteadily, but for a moment, he didn't know what to say. The 3,500 ancient horned dragon phantoms above Duan Lingtian's had almost filled half the sky above the canyon. As they fell into Xiongquan's eyes, his pupils constricted repeatedly in shock. Xiongquan never expected it. In less than 10 years, the young man who hadn't even entered the nascent soul stage already possessed such terrifying cultivation, making him only able to look up in awe. Xiongquan, no matter what my current strength is, I am still your young master. This will never change. As if seeing the bitterness and inferiority in Xiongquan's eyes, Duan Lingtian smiled faintly, his smile gentle and refreshing. Young master. Xiongquan's eyes lit up with excitement upon hearing this, and his stubbled face flushed red. Furthermore, when you go out to explore with me in the future, you will eventually possess strength like mine now. Even surpassing my current self is only a matter of time. Duan Lingtian added. Young master, can I really do it? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Xiongquan's breathing became rapid and difficult to calm for a long time, as he asked with a look of disbelief. Although, through that mysterious sword character on the mountain wall, his comprehension in sword intent had improved significantly. He even had the confidence to comprehend a higher level of sword intent in the near future. But that was only limited to comprehension. His not-so-strong talent invisibly limited the improvement of his cultivation. Xiongquan, are you questioning my words? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, asking with a half-smile. Xiongquan wouldn't dare. Xiongquan hurriedly lowered his head, fearing Duan Lingtian's anger. All right, let's go back first. After Duan Lingtian reluctantly looked at the sword character on the mountain wall one last time, he greeted Feng Tianwu and Xiongquan and left the secluded canyon. After leaving the one-line sky entrance of the canyon, Xiongquan began to tidy up the surrounding forest, perfectly concealing the canyon's entrance. Besides you, only Eru knows about this place? Duan Lingtian looked at Xiongquan, seemingly wanting to confirm further. Yes. Xiongquan respectfully replied, then added, I've already told Eru that he's not allowed to tell anyone about this place. So, even his parents don't know about it. Duan Lingtian nodded, feeling a sense of relief. It seemed that currently, only he, Feng Tianwu, Xiongquan, and Eru knew about this place. As long as they didn't spread the word, no fifth person would know. Let's go back. At Duan Lingtian's call, the three hurried back in the direction of Xiong family village. Big brother Duan. On the way, Feng Tianwu couldn't help but use elemental energy to transmit her voice to Duan Lingtian, asking, You just said that Xiongquan will eventually have strength like yours now, or even surpass it. Do you mean after he comprehends Sword Grand Affinity? Of course not. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and with a serious expression, he used elemental energy to transmit his voice, saying, I will do my best to ensure he possesses strength no less than my current self before he comprehends Sword Grand Affinity. Is that possible? Feng Tianwu was surprised by Duan Lingtian's words. Although, with the guidance of the Sword Dao insights contained within that sword character, Xiongquan's future achievements in the way of the sword won't be low. But that only means his comprehension in sword intent and sword grand affinity isn't low. As for his cultivation, not to mention that his dantian has just been repaired, and it will take some time to recover to its former peak. Even if he recovers his former cultivation with his talent, it's probably difficult for him to achieve great success. Even if we pile spirit fruits on him, because his talent isn't strong, the effect won't be significant. Feng Tianwu continued. She said this not to look down on Xiongquan, but to state a fact and her personal opinion. Tianwu, do you know about marrow cleansing and bone transformation? Talent, though innate, can be reversed if one encounters a miraculous opportunity later on. Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Not to mention anything else, just look at him. His talent was not weak to begin with. But when he consumed enough myriad-year stalactite, In the stalactite cave on one side of the peak of Tianquan Peak in Seven-Star Sword Sect, his talent further improved, reaching the limit that martial artists on Cloud Continent could achieve. Not to mention myriad-year stalactite. Let's talk about Miss Yixian from Luyan Town in the eastern region of the Northern Desert, whom he met back then. Yixian's talent wasn't high either. But after he used his elemental energy combined with spiritual power to enter Yixian's body and performed a unique technique from the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, Yixian's talent underwent a drastic change. Although the improvement in talent for those who undergo marrow cleansing with that technique isn't as great as for martial artists who consume myriad-year stalactite and complete bone transformation, it's not far off. Marrow cleansing? Bone transformation. Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Feng Tianwu's autumn eyes narrowed. She was not unfamiliar with these two terms. But to achieve them was incredibly difficult. After all, items that could help someone cleanse their marrow and transform their bones were all rare supreme treasures on Cloud Continent, something that could only be encountered by chance. Does Big Brother Duan have such a supreme treasure on him? Feng Tianwu couldn't help but guess secretly, and the more she guessed, the more certain she became. Along the way, too many miracles had happened to her Big Brother Duan, so many that she was somewhat numb. However, she didn't know that Duan Ling Tian didn't have any supreme treasures on him. As long as I perform marrow cleansing for Xiongquan using that unique technique from the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories to improve his talent, it won't take long for him to recover his peak cultivation from back then. In the future, I'll find some spirit fruits for him, and his cultivation will quickly catch up. On the way back to Xiong family village, Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself. Xiongquan had already comprehended void transformation intent. As long as his talent kept up, coupled with the assistance of spirit fruits, his cultivation could be unrestrictedly elevated to the void transformation stage. Upon returning to Xiong family village, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu were, as expected, treated as honored guests and received with warm hospitality. For the next few days, the two stayed in the village. Xiongquan had to leave, so he naturally had to explain things to the villagers. Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu were waiting for him to finish explaining before leaving together. Uncle Xiongquan, are you really leaving again? Upon hearing that Xiongquan was leaving, Eru, who had grown into an adult, had red eyes. This burly young man showed his true childlike nature when talking to Xiongquan. Eru, after Uncle Xiongquan leaves, the important task of protecting the village will be entrusted to you. Xiongquan patted Eru's shoulder, grinning as he spoke. Eru, Big Brother Ling Tian, will leave a set of cultivation methods and several martial skills for you. Both the cultivation methods and martial skills are for sword cultivators. Duan Ling Tian looked at Eru and said with a smile, additionally, I'll also leave you the pills needed for cultivation. When you break through to the void prying stage, go to that canyon and observe the sword character and comprehend the profound principles and true meaning of the way of the sword from it. At this point, the smile on Duan Ling Tian's face vanished, replaced by a solemn expression. However, you must remember, you cannot tell anyone about that place. Otherwise, once someone knows about that place, they might choose to kill you to silence you, so as not to let others know. Duan Ling Tian warned repeatedly. Big Brother Ling Tian, I absolutely won't tell anyone else. Eru promised with a serious expression. After leaving the cultivation methods, martial skills, and pills, as well as a few casually refined spirit artifacts for Eru, Duan Ling Tian took Feng Tianwu and Xiongquan and left. They didn't greet the other villagers, choosing to leave quietly. After leaving Xiong family village, they did not leave the surrounding mountain range, but returned to that canyon. We don't know when we'll be able to return after leaving this time. The three of us should try to gain more Sword Dao insights from that sword character. Those Sword Dao insights will be stored in our minds, and we can slowly explore them after we leave. As long as we can comprehend them, our strength will surely reach a higher level. Duan Ling Tian said to Feng Tianwu and Xiongquan. Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, both Feng Tianwu and Xiongquan nodded in agreement. They understood what Duan Ling Tian meant. After they left this time, they didn't know when they would return to observe the sword character on the mountain wall and comprehend the sword Dao insights contained within it. Now, they could observe it for a long time, forcefully memorizing the obscure and difficult-to-understand information derived from the sword character in their minds, and then slowly comprehend it later. Once they comprehended that obscure and difficult-to-understand information, it would be equivalent to further comprehending the sword Dao insights contained within the sword character, and their strength would be greatly improved. Remember as much as you can, do our best. Duan Ling Tian said to Feng Tian Wu and Xiong Quan with a solemn expression. Then his gaze shifted to the mountain wall not far away. More precisely, it shifted to the sword character on the mountain wall. Since the mountain wall with the sword character carved on it could not be separated and taken away, he could only do this, receiving as much information as possible transmitted from the sword character. That obscure and difficult-to-understand information would become a great wealth for him in the days to come. Seeing Duan Ling Tian staring intently at the sword character on the mountain wall, as if possessed, Feng Tian Wu did not hesitate and also looked at the sword character. As Feng Tian Wu immersed herself wholeheartedly in the sword character on the mountain wall, fully receiving the information transmitted to her by the sword character, Xiong Quan also made his move. I will not become a burden to young master. Xiong Quan took a deep breath and then looked at the sword character on the mountain wall. Ever since he witnessed Duan Ling Tian's strength, he knew that even if he stayed by young master's side in the future, he could only do miscellaneous tasks. It was unlikely that he could protect young master as he did before. Now, he only hoped that he could quickly gain enough self-preservation strength so that he would not become a burden to young master. Time quietly flowed by. 1 month later. Boom. A soft sound came from within the canyon. It was Xiong Quan, whose eyes had been dull, now with a hint of brilliance. His body trembled, and he fell directly to the ground. After falling to the ground, Xiong Quan was covered in sweat, profusely, supporting himself with his hands, constantly gasping for breath. I persisted for so long, but in the end, I still couldn't continue. The amount of information transmitted from that sword character is too vast. With my current spiritual power, it is difficult to receive more. After a while, Xiong Quan caught his breath and murmured to himself. At the same time, he looked at the purple-clad youth and the red-clad woman standing together, grinning. Young master and Miss Tian Wu truly look like a golden boy and jade girl. The youth in purple was handsome and dashing, with a graceful demeanor. The woman in red was stunningly beautiful, captivating all. At first glance, they were simply a match made in heaven. Xiong Quan, who woke up first, did not leave. He sat cross-legged on the ground to cultivate, while also vigilantly sensing his surroundings, especially the one-line sky entrance of the canyon, guarding against wild beasts that might accidentally intrude. Time flew by, and another month passed. The woman in red finally stirred. Feng Tian Wu's eyes flickered, gaining a bit of vitality. Her body swayed, but she reacted in time to steady herself. At the same time, a thin layer of sweat subtly covered her pretty face, her fragrant sweat dripping. Brother Duan is still comprehending? Feng Tian Wu looked at Duan Ling Tian beside her, and when she saw that Duan Ling Tian still showed no signs of waking up, her autumn eyes flickered. That's right. Brother Duan's spiritual power is much stronger than mine. The ability to forcefully receive information transmitted from the sword character on the mountain wall primarily depended on spiritual power. Over the years, because he couldn't cultivate, Xiong Quan's spiritual power had remained at the 7th level of the void prying stage. Therefore, he was the first to be repelled by the sword character on the mountain wall. Now, even if he looked at that sword character again, he would no longer immerse himself, because the burden on his spiritual power had reached its limit. Unless he could comprehend and digest the obscure and difficult-to-understand information he had received, it would be almost impossible for him to gain any more benefits from the sword character. Feng Tian Wu, due to her fire spirit body, had been unable to consume spirit fruits for cultivation since breaking through to the void interpretation stage. Once she consumed spirit fruits, the fire spirit body would be forcefully activated, even leading to an early eruption. At that time, she would perish. Because of this, Her cultivation was only at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage, and her spiritual power was also at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage. The spiritual power of the 4th level of the void interpretation stage was far stronger than Xiongquan's spiritual power. Therefore, compared to Xiongquan, she received an additional month's worth of Sword Dao insights contained within the sword character. As for Duanling Tian, his cultivation was at the 6th level of the void transformation stage, and his spiritual power was at the 7th level of the void transformation stage. The spiritual power of the 7th level of the void transformation stage destined him to receive more Sword Dao insights contained within the sword character. Xiongquan, how long have I been looking at that sword character? Feng Tianwu looked at Xiongquan and asked curiously. Miss Tianwu, I'm not entirely sure how long it has been. However, you woke up a month after I did. Xiongquan said truthfully. The reason he said this was because he didn't know how long he himself had been looking at the sword character. Feng Tianwu nodded, and when her gaze fell on Duanling Tian again, it was filled with tender affection, as if it could melt everything. Brother Duan will probably be able to hold on for another month or two. Based on the comparison of her own spiritual power level and Xiongquan's spiritual power level, Feng Tianwu secretly guessed. And now, Duanling Tian was like a baby greedily sucking milk, greedily receiving countless obscure and difficult-to-understand pieces of information transmitted from the sword character on the mountain wall. He didn't know how much time had passed, nor did he care. Right now, he had only one thought. Within the limits of his spiritual power, receive as many Sword Dao insights contained within this sword character as possible, and accumulate them completely in the depths of his mind. Then, he would take time to comprehend them later. While Feng Tianwu and Xiongquan were silently waiting for Duanling Tian to wake up, the Han Dynasty, however, welcomed 4 uninvited guests. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. For figures broke through the air, instantly descending upon the imperial capital of the Han Dynasty, moving so fast that they seemed to appear out of thin air. The 4 figures quickly appeared above the most luxurious cluster of buildings within the imperial capital of the Han Dynasty. This was precisely the imperial palace within the imperial capital of the Han Dynasty. The imperial palace was also the stronghold of the Han Dynasty imperial family, which ruled the Han Dynasty. The 4 figures revealed themselves, and it was vaguely visible that the leader was a burly old man, whose face showed no emotion, but in the depths of his eyes, there was a clear flicker of cold light. Behind him, an old man and 2 middle-aged men followed closely, respectfully, and subserviently. Emperor of the Han Dynasty, get out here. At some point, one of the middle-aged men opened his mouth, his voice imbued with elemental energy, spreading like a thunderclap in the air, sweeping down and enveloping the entire imperial palace. Whoosh! As this voice reached them, the entire imperial palace erupted into chaos, like a single stone stirring up 1,000 ripples. Who is it? Who is so bold? How dare they challenge the prestige of our Han Dynasty imperial family? Simply seeking death. Throughout the imperial palace, many guards, eunuchs, and palace maids discussed animatedly, all believing that the owner of the voice descending from the sky was seeking death. Throughout the Han Dynasty, the imperial family was the absolute ruler. In the Han Dynasty, no one, and no force, dared to easily provoke the Han Dynasty imperial family. And today, not only did someone come to the Han Dynasty imperial family to cause trouble, but they also openly ordered the ruler of the Han Dynasty imperial family, the Supreme, His Majesty the Emperor, to get out. Those who trespass the Han Dynasty imperial family execute without mercy. Not long after, a thunderous voice spread throughout the Han Dynasty imperial palace. Immediately after, a middle-aged man in black armor, leading a group of people also in black armor, soared into the sky, reaching high altitude in no time, staring menacingly at the 4 uninvited guests. It's Commander Hong. That person even managed to summon Commander Hong, the strongest leader of our Han Dynasty imperial family's Black Xian army. It seems he's not far from death. As the commander of the Black Xian army, Commander Hong is a 9th-level void interpretation stage expert. Within the Imperial Palace, exclamations spread. More people stared intently at the high sky. Today the sky was clear, and one could vaguely see the two groups of people confronting each other in the high sky. One group consisted of only 4 people. The other group had more than a dozen people. Besides one person standing alone in front, the others formed a circle, completely surrounding the first group of 4. I'll give you one more chance. Make your Han Dynasty Emperor get out here. The middle-aged man who had previously ordered the Han Dynasty Emperor to get out, seeing that the Han Dynasty Emperor had not appeared, immediately looked displeased, staring gloomily at the burly middle-aged man in black armor. He was an elder of the Chuyun sect, a second-rate force in the northern desert, and a 9th-level void transformation stage expert. In his opinion, his arrival in a backwater place, like the Han Dynasty, was already enough for the host to personally come out to greet him, yet the other party had not even shown up after he had taken the initiative to call out. How could he not be angry? Repeatedly insulting His Majesty is a capital offense. Black Shin Army, heed my command, kill them all without mercy. The burly middle-aged man in armor, who was the leader, heard the words of the middle-aged elder from the Chuyun sect. His face changed drastically, and he roared, directly giving the order. Kill. As he gave the order, the faces of the other dozen or so black-armored guards turned cold, and they all moved, surging towards the Chuyun sect elder. Boom, 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 boom. Almost at the same time, a series of sudden explosions erupted, echoing through the sky, sweeping down and reaching the ears of many onlookers in the Imperial Palace. How is this possible? Impossible. Impossible. I must be dreaming. I must be dreaming. Now, the group of onlookers all changed color, their eyes filled with fear. Inside the Imperial Palace of the Han Dynasty, the group of people looking up at the sky all changed their expressions, some even trembling violently, as if they had seen something terrifying. I'm not dreaming. How is this possible? Many people subconsciously pinched their thighs, and the pain from their thighs seemed to tell them. Everything in front of them was real. They were not dreaming. High in the sky, including the leader of the Black Profound Army, the burly middle-aged man in black armor, and a dozen or so soldiers of the Black Profound Army, their bodies exploded at the same time, as if by prior arrangement. Blood rained down, splattering everywhere, like a dozen blooming fireworks, extremely dazzling. However, the group of onlookers on the ground had no mind to appreciate this. A genuine fear rose in their hearts, and they felt a chill. It's too terrifying. Those 4 people didn't even move, and Commander Hong and a dozen Black Profound Army soldiers all died. Commander Hong was, after all, a 9th-level void transformation expert, yet he died so inexplicably. Who exactly are they? No wonder they dared to descend so ostentatiously upon our Han Dynasty imperial family and demand that His Majesty the Emperor come out. It turns out they are such terrifying beings. At this moment, the entire imperial palace of the Han Dynasty was in chaos, and many people began to flee outside the palace. In their view, the 4 people in the sky were clearly hostile. Who knew if they would directly act and wipe out the entire imperial family? At that point, if they remained in the imperial palace, they would surely die. Run, quick run. If we don't run, we might die here. The imperial guards, eunuchs, and palace maids frantically fled outside the palace, as if the sky had fallen. Many also stood rooted to the spot. Their bodies trembled, and their legs felt as if they were filled with lead. They wanted to flee, but found their legs were beyond their control. Who are the 4 of you? Just then, a resonant voice rang out, spreading throughout the entire palace, steadying the hearts of many who were anxious to flee. It's His Majesty. His Majesty has come out. I heard His Majesty already broke through to the void transformation realm a few months ago, and with several old princes who also broke through to the void transformation realm. They should not fear those 4. Amidst the discussions, many people abandoned the idea of fleeing, stopping in their tracks and looking towards the 5 figures rising into the sky. The middle-aged man in dragon robes led the way, followed closely by 4 old men. As soon as they appeared, they attracted the attention of many in the palace. They were precisely the emperor of the Han Dynasty and the four old princes of the Han Dynasty. After the 10 Dynasty martial arts tournament concluded, the emperor of the Han Dynasty returned with great success, bringing back numerous concept fragments, which in a short period of time created 5 void transformation realm experts for the imperial family, including himself. Today, witnessing the black profound army soldiers turn into a rain of blood in an instant, the 5 of them finally couldn't sit still. A moment later, the emperor of the Han Dynasty, accompanied by the 4 old princes, reached high in the sky and confronted the 4 individuals led by the burly old man. On his face, there was clearly a hint of apprehension. "You are the emperor of the Han Dynasty?" The middle-aged man behind the burly old man, who had twice told the emperor of the Han Dynasty to get out, looked at the emperor with an unfriendly expression, his eyes flashing with a predatory chill. "Presumptuous." Just then, an old prince following behind the emperor of the Han Dynasty stepped forward, glaring at the middle-aged man and rebuking. "Don't you understand manners? Your master hasn't even spoken yet. What right do you, a mere follower, have to speak to His Majesty the Emperor of our Han Dynasty like that? Right?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man was first stunned, then couldn't help but laugh. As he continued to laugh, a sinister expression appeared on his face. Then, he slowly raised his hand and murmured, "I'm afraid by the time I prove I have that right, you won't be able to see it anymore." Almost as soon as the middle-aged man's words fell, his hand twitched, and then he pointed out with lightning speed. Whoosh! An extremely fast finger force shot out from his fingertip, creating a fleeting, piercing hiss. From beginning to end, the emperor of the Han Dynasty and the other 4 did not have time to react. When 4 of them finally reacted and their expressions changed, they discovered that the old prince who had spoken earlier now had a bloody hole in the center of his forehead. Uft! A jet of blood spurted from the hole. The old prince, his eyes dull and lifeless, collapsed and fell with a thud. A first-level void transformation realm martial artist, dead. Boom. The old prince's corpse fell onto a wide square within the imperial palace, splattering into a pool of flesh and blood that stained the ground, gathering together as if forming a small stream. For a moment, the onlookers in the imperial palace were completely silent. After a brief, stunned moment, they frantically fled outside the palace, not daring to hesitate for an instant. Heavens! His Majesty and the 4 old princes are all first-level void transformation realm experts. Yet, in the blink of an eye, without seeing how that person even acted, one old prince died. It's too terrifying. Who exactly are these people? Could they be powerful experts from beyond the domain? Possibly. The entire imperial palace was in complete chaos. Not only were the imperial guards, eunuchs, and palace maids fleeing, but even the imperial concubines, princes, princesses, and others from the inner palace also began to escape. The emperor of the Han Dynasty saw all this chaos, and his heart was filled with anxiety. But he had no time to deal with it now, because he knew that if the current matter wasn't handled well, it could become a disaster for their Han Dynasty imperial family. For seniors, your arrival in the Han Dynasty is truly a blessing for our Han Dynasty. I am the emperor of the Han Dynasty. May I ask, what is the purpose of your visit, seniors? Although one of his imperial uncles had been instantly killed by the other party, at this moment, the emperor of the Han Dynasty felt no resentment. Because he knew that even if he harbored resentment, it would be useless. He simply couldn't get revenge. To preserve the Han Dynasty imperial family, he had no choice but to humble himself before these 4 experts, who were suspected to be from beyond the domain, and dared not put on the airs of the emperor of the Han Dynasty from beginning to end. A person just following behind has such terrifying strength. With just one finger, he killed my 11th imperial uncle, whose cultivation had already broken through to the first level of the void transformation realm. His speed was so swift that it didn't even trigger the power of heaven and earth, let alone form a heaven and earth phenomenon. If he wanted to wipe out our Han Dynasty imperial family, he alone would be enough. And he is merely following behind this old man, his status clearly far inferior to this old man. How strong must this old man's power be? Gazing at the burly old man who led the 4 individuals, The emperor of the Han dynasty felt an inexplicable tremor in his heart, then hastily averted his gaze, trembling inwardly and lacking the courage to continue thinking. Humph! The middle-aged man who had killed an old prince of the Han dynasty snorted coldly. We came to find you, naturally, for something? I heard that among the group of young experts from your Han dynasty who participated in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Tournament hosted by Kangwolf Fortress, there was a person named Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the emperor of the Han dynasty's pupils couldn't help but contract. He was naturally not unfamiliar with that name. It was precisely because of the owner of that name that he was able to receive a large amount of rewards after the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Tournament ended last time. May I ask, Senior, why do you inquire about Duan Ling Tian? The emperor of the Han dynasty asked with a wary expression. Slap. Without any visible movement from the middle-aged man, a crisp slapping sound rang out, and a burning red handprint appeared on the emperor of the Han dynasty's face. Am I asking you now, or are you asking me? The middle-aged man's eyes shot out killing intent, and his tone was extremely low. Evidently, it was he who had given the emperor of the Han dynasty a lightning-fast slap. So fast. The expressions of the 3 old princes who had survived behind the emperor of the Han dynasty all changed. When the other party acted earlier, it was understandable that they weren't prepared. This time, even though they were prepared, they still couldn't detect any trace of the other party's movement. At once, they also deeply realized the other party was far beyond what they could compare to. The emperor of the Han dynasty took a deep breath. Although he felt his dignity had been trampled, he dared not express his anger, fearing he would follow in the footsteps of the previous old prince. Senior, I don't know much about Duan Ling Tian. I only know that he is a young expert from the Blackstone Empire. Before he represented our Han dynasty in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Tournament, he was a young expert recommended by the Blackstone Empire to participate in our Han dynasty's Dynasty Martial Arts competition. The emperor of the Han dynasty slowly spoke, shifting all responsibility to the Blackstone Empire. Blackstone Empire. This time, before the middle-aged man could speak, the burly old man leading the group spoke. His eyes flashed with a sharp glint as he stared intently at the emperor of the Han dynasty. His deep gaze made the emperor of the Han dynasty's heart pound, and his body trembled uncontrollably from fright. Where is it? The burly old man paused, then asked. It's just to the south. The emperor of the Han dynasty said with a panicked expression, simultaneously pointing in the direction of the Blackstone Empire, not daring to show the slightest delay. Go! Almost as soon as the emperor of the Han dynasty's words fell, the burly old man uttered a single word, then vanished into thin air before the emperor of the Han dynasty and the 3 surviving old princes. At once, the pupils of the emperor of the Han dynasty and the other 3 all contracted, vanished into thin air before their eyes. How powerful must this old man be? However, their pupils quickly continued to contract, again and again. The 3 individuals who had been following behind the burly old man, 1 old man and 2 middle-aged men, also vanished into thin air before their eyes, one by one, after the burly old man disappeared. From beginning to end, they were unable to catch any trace of the 3 individuals. Who exactly are they? It wasn't until the 4 burly old men left that the emperor of the Han dynasty finally breathed a sigh of relief, but his face was still filled with terror, a terror that stemmed from the depths of his heart. They are undoubtedly powerhouses from beyond the domain. However, I just don't know why they are looking for Duan Ling Tian. The old prince who had previously led the young powerhouses of the Han dynasty with the emperor to Kangwolf Fortress to participate in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Conference, and who was also Zishang's former master, murmured to himself with a puzzled expression. It definitely won't be anything good. Another old prince's eyes gleamed, that leading old man, although he didn't say why he was looking for Duan Ling Tian. When he learned that Duan Ling Tian was from the Blackstone Empire, I saw a hateful killing intent deep in his eyes. So, if Duan Ling Tian really returns to the Han dynasty, he's probably doomed. The last old prince's pupils contracted. Although they had never seen Duan Ling Tian, They knew that a significant part of the reason their cultivation had broken through to the void transformation stage was due to him. Duan Ling Tian, in an invisible way, had given them a great favor. Therefore, they couldn't help but feel a chill for Duan Ling Tian. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian, the person in question, was still in a daze in a valley deep within a remote mountain range in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Of course, he wasn't truly in a daze. Duan Ling Tian stood there, his gaze fixed intently on the character's sword on the distant mountain wall, as if he were enchanted. Not far away, a woman in red sat cross-legged in the low air, quietly cultivating. Near the entrance of the valley, a middle-aged man was practicing his sword. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sounds of sword cries rose and fell. Every time he moved, the sword in his hand would condense a solid sword chi, which would then fly out and, with destructive force, embed itself into the side of the mountain wall. He didn't know when. The middle-aged man was sweating profusely, but he still gritted his teeth and persevered. I cannot hold back the young master. I cannot become a burden to the young master. The middle-aged man muttered to himself, and almost at the same time, his potential seemed to be unleashed, and his speed became even faster. Duan Ling Tian didn't know how much time had passed. He only knew to absorb as much of the sword Dao insights contained within the character's sword as possible, accumulating them one by one in his mind through his spiritual energy. As time passed, he gradually felt his spiritual energy becoming increasingly weak, as if it had reached its limit. However, he still endured with all his might. Persevere. Persevere. Persevere a little longer. After an unknown period of perseverance, Duan Ling Tian became completely numb. As his spiritual energy dissipated, he jolted, snapped back to reality, stumbled, and barely managed to stand firm. It seems a long time has passed. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian slowly recovered. Although he didn't know how long he had been staring at the character's sword, judging from his personal feeling, a considerable amount of time must have passed. Brother Duan, are you awake? A surprised and pleasant voice reached his ears, making Duan Ling Tian immediately snap back to attention. Without turning around, he could tell whose voice it was. Tian Wu. After calling out her name, Duan Ling Tian finally turned around and smiled at the woman sitting cross-legged not far away, like a fire spirit. Brother Duan, you woke up 2 whole months later than me. Feng Tian Wu sighed softly, her breath like orchids. 2 months later than you. Duan Ling Tian was startled at first, then couldn't help but ask, how long did you keep staring at that sword character? With your spiritual energy, you should have been able to last for quite some time, right? I don't know exactly how long I lasted. I only know that I lasted 1 month longer than Xiong Quan. Feng Tian Wu gently shook her head, her pretty face filled with confusion. Young master. At this moment, Xiong Quan, who was practicing his sword near the entrance of the valley, also noticed that Duan Ling Tian had woken up, and a look of joy appeared on his sweat-drenched face. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Let's go. In the blink of an eye, several months have passed. Let's find an inn in a nearby city to rest for a few days, and then set off for the domain beyond. Feng Tian Wu and Xiong Quan deferred to Duan Ling Tian's lead and had no objections. At once, the three left the valley, found a small city nearby, and checked into an inn. After washing up and settling in, Duan Ling Tian slept until noon on the 3rd day, finally recovering some of the spiritual energy he had expended over the past few months. After waking up at noon on the 3rd day, Duan Ling Tian went to find Xiong Quan and got straight to the point. Xiong Quan, cooperate with me. Next, I will use special means to cleanse your meridians and refine your marrow. While Xiong Quan's face showed surprise and ecstasy, Duan Ling Tian, using his elemental energy combined with his spiritual energy, performed a thorough meridian cleansing and marrow refinement for Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan was too old, and compared to the previous Yi Xian, the difficulty of cleansing his meridians and refining his marrow was even greater. Compared to the last time he cleansed Yi Xian's meridians and refined her marrow, Duan Ling Tian's elemental energy and spiritual energy had significantly improved. Yet, even so, Duan Ling Tian still spent an entire day and night to help Xiong Quan completely finish the meridian cleansing and marrow refinement. It's done. After everything was completed, Duan Ling Tian was already drenched in sweat. His spiritual energy, which had just recovered a day ago, was completely depleted, and a wave of exhaustion swept over him, making his body somewhat unsteady. "Young master, are you all right?" Seeing Duan Ling Tian's current state, Xiong Quan's expression changed. "I'm fine. I just need to rest. If Tian Wu looks for me, tell her that I might need to rest for another 2 days." Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, barely steadying himself, and said to Xiong Quan. Immediately after, without another word, he turned and left Xiong Quan's room, and after returning to his own room, he collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep. He was truly too tired. After Duan Ling Tian left, Xiong Quan sat cross-legged on the bed, murmuring to himself, half doubting, "Can young master really help me complete meridian cleansing and marrow refinement just by working for a day and a night? My talent." Taking a deep breath, Xiong Quan closed his eyes and began to cultivate. As a former void-prying stage 7th level martial artist, Xiong Quan's senses were not weak, and he was very clear about the speed at which he had previously absorbed heaven and earth yuan qi for cultivation. Precisely because of this, Xiong Quan, after cultivating for more than half an hour, jolted and completely woke up. His face was filled with an incredulous expression. "My talent, it really did improve. Compared to before, it has increased by several times over. Unbelievable. Unbelievable." Xiong Quan stared with wide eyes, unable to recover for a long time. When he finally came to his senses, a hint of remorse appeared on his face. "Young master worked so hard for me, yet I still doubted him. I really shouldn't have." When Duan Ling Tian had previously said he would cleanse his meridians and refine his marrow, although he hadn't said anything on the surface, he still didn't believe it in his heart, because it was simply too incredible. Without using anything, just by combining elemental energy with spiritual energy, one could help someone cleanse their meridians and refine their marrow. In his previous view, this was almost impossible. However, the truth had given him a resounding slap. His current talent had indeed been elevated after Duan Ling Tian used his elemental energy combined with spiritual energy to perform meridian cleansing and marrow refinement on him. "Young master, if I, Xiong Quan, ever dare to doubt you again, I am not worthy of being human." Unbeknownst to him, Xiong Quan's eyes were bloodshot, and he muttered to himself with a serious expression. As he continued to mutter, he seemed to feel that this was not enough, so he raised his hand and pricked his finger, and a drop of blood rose into the air. "I, Xiong Quan, swear here, if I ever have even a shred of doubt about young master's words in the future, then let the 99 thunder tribulation strike me dead." Xiong Quan was very straightforward, directly making an oath, and it was an oath with the oath tribulation, which could not be violated. Once violated, the only outcome was death. Boom, 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 boom. 9 consecutive thunderclaps sounded in the sky above the small city, startling countless people in the small city who couldn't help but look up. 9 thunderclaps. Someone has made an oath tribulation. The oath tribulation is also known as the 99 thunder tribulation. 9 thunderclaps signify that the oath made has been witnessed. Once violated, the 99 thunder tribulation will descend and strike the oath maker dead. It is said that when the thunder punishment descends, even the legendary martial emperor powerhouses cannot escape death. I wonder who made the oath tribulation. The small city, which had been as still as stagnant water, became lively due to Xiong Quan's oath made with the 99 thunder tribulation, as if it had regained its vitality overnight. And all of this did not affect Duan Ling Tian. Currently, Duan Ling Tian was sound asleep on the bed, undisturbed by the 9 thunderclaps. He was unroused by the thunder. 3 days later, Duan Ling Tian finally woke up, feeling a bit groggy. The exhaustion is still too great. I'll find Tian Wu and Xiong Quan to eat, and then we'll leave for the domain beyond. Duan Ling Tian made his decision. As for the Red Cloud Kingdom, he didn't plan to return this time. After all, it had only been a little over a year since he last left. Of course, the biggest reason was that his parents weren't there, so returning wouldn't have much meaning. It would be better to seize the time to find the great treasure left by the reincarnation Martial Emperor. And I can also explore the domain beyond Force, where Kuer and Little Fayer are located along the way. Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself. Stepping out of his room, Duan Ling Tian found Feng Tian Wu, while Xiong Quan was still cultivating. He's actually at a breakthrough. I won't disturb you for now. Duan Ling Tian stood outside Xiong Quan's room. After his spiritual energy extended inside and detected Xiong Quan's situation, he murmured to himself and then turned to leave. Tian Wu, let's go eat. Duan Ling Tian called Feng Tian Wu, left the inn, found a restaurant nearby, and sat down. On the way, Feng Tian Wu had already put on a veil, concealing her peerless beauty. Therefore, she didn't attract too much attention. Hey, have you heard? The Red Cloud Kingdom is about to be destroyed. Suddenly, a soft voice clearly entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. The Crimson Sky Kingdom? Is it going to be destroyed? Hearing this, Duan Ling Tian instinctively frowned, while looking at the source of the sound. It was a group of drinkers at a table not far from them. The speaker was a young man with an unusual, effeminate appearance. Every word he uttered exuded an extreme softness, much like a woman. To use the words from Duan Ling Tian's previous life on Earth. This was a sissy or femboy. The Crimson Sky Kingdom? One of the many kingdoms under our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The homeland of Duan Ling Tian, the strongest person in the Seven-Star Sword sect. At the same table as the effeminate young man were two other young men. They were surprised to hear what he said. That's right, it's Duan Ling Tian's homeland. The first young man nodded, and as he spoke, his voice became even more effeminate. You don't know. The reason the Crimson Sky Kingdom is facing a crisis this time is because of that Duan Ling Tian. What? The Crimson Sky Kingdom's crisis this time originated from Duan Ling Tian? The other two were greatly surprised. The three people at the table weren't deliberately lowering their voices, and their discussion soon caught the attention of other drinkers in the restaurant. Someone wants to deal with the Crimson Sky Kingdom because of Duan Ling Tian? No way. As far as I know, when Duan Ling Tian annihilated the three great sects of the Azure Forest and rebuilt the Seven-Star Sword sect, he was already close to the void prying stage. Even our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family has to be wary of him. That's right. And not just our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even in the Blackstone Empire, those who can defeat him are probably few and far between. However, Duan Ling Tian has the advantage of youth, so the powerhouses of the Blackstone Empire shouldn't easily fall out with him. Last time at the Grand Han Dynasty's Dynasty Martial Competition, Duan Ling Tian ranked first. From that time on, he was recognized as the strongest among the contemporary young generation of our Grand Han Dynasty. Such a genius, unless he can be stifled in the cradle. Otherwise, even the Grand Han Dynasty's imperial family wouldn't dare to easily turn against him. Suddenly, the entire restaurant became lively. The topic of conversation at every table shifted to Duan Ling Tian. When Duan Ling Tian was still a disciple of the Seven-Star Sword sect, he had already become famous throughout the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom for surpassing the 5 great young masters, who were the most outstanding among the contemporary young generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Of course, at that time, although people in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had heard of such a figure, most of them didn't take him too seriously. In the past history of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there had also been many exceptionally talented prodigies. But many of them either died young or, as they got older, their talent greatly diminished, becoming mediocre. Many people didn't believe that Duan Ling Tian could continue to be a prodigy and a genius. However, later, Duan Ling Tian, subtly, gave these people a resounding slap in the face. Duan Ling Tian, with his own strength, avenged the Seven-Star Sword sect and annihilated the 3 great sects of the Azure Forest. When this news spread, the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was shaken. The 3 great sects of Azure Forest, a powerful sect formed by the merger of the demonic Lotus Saber sect, the Gyuan sect, and the Snow Moon sect among the 5 great sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, had first annihilated the Kaishan sect and then the 7-Star Sword sect, rising to prominence. Their strength was so great that it could be said to be directly comparable to the imperial family of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Yet, such a sect was annihilated by Duan Ling Tian. It was said that the 3 sect masters of the 3 great sects of Azure Forest all died at Duan Ling Tian's hands alone. The monstrous martial artist who was praised for overpowering the 5 great young masters years ago, after several years, single-handedly annihilated the 3 great sects of Azure Forest, shaking the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The heat of this incident had not yet subsided when another astonishing piece of news arrived, sweeping across the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and simultaneously pushing Duan Ling Tian's prestige to a new height. Duan Ling Tian, in the dynasty martial competition held by the Grand Han Dynasty, overpowered a group of young powerhouses from the Grand Han Dynasty and won the honor of first place. Since then, Duan Ling Tian was recognized as the number 1 among the contemporary young generation of the Grand Han Dynasty. When this news spread, everyone in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom felt proud of Duan Ling Tian, because Duan Ling Tian had come from their Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. What do you know? Just as a group of drinkers started to make a commotion, all doubting the words of the effeminate young man with the strange appearance, the young man snorted coldly. The ones targeting Duan Ling Tian are not people from our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, nor from the Blackstone Empire, and certainly not from the Grand Han Dynasty. Hearing the young man's words, everyone was stunned. Could it be people from another dynasty? Possibly. Perhaps Duan Ling Tian killed someone from a certain dynasty during the 10 Dynasty martial competition, and the backer of the person Duan Ling Tian killed has come looking for trouble. Many people couldn't help but guess. A bunch of pig brains. The effeminate young man with the strange appearance scoffed upon hearing these discussions. Just as he was about to incur public wrath, he continued, "Think carefully with your pig brains. Even if people from other dynasties really wanted revenge on Duan Ling Tian, would they dare to make such a big fuss? If he dared to make a big fuss, it wouldn't just be a matter between him and Duan Ling Tian. The 2 great dynasties would also fall out and become adversaries." It must be said that the young man's words were indeed very reasonable, calming down a lot of people's anger. If you know who wants to deal with the Crimson Sky Kingdom, then hurry up and say it. Don't keep us in suspense. Some people said impatiently, I'm not sure who exactly those people are." The young man snorted again and slowly said. However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a scoff. "I thought you were so capable. Turns out you're just someone who doesn't know the full story. You called others pig brains, but aren't you the pig brain? What a waste of my expression." With someone leading the way, a group of people who had been ridiculed by the young man earlier retorted one by one, their words unreserved. "Although I'm not sure who exactly those people are, I can confirm. They are from beyond the realm. Furthermore, the reason they haven't acted is because they want to coerce Duan Ling Tian into returning. They aren't targeting the Crimson Sky Kingdom, but Duan Ling Tian. The Crimson Sky Kingdom is just a bait for them to lure Duan Ling Tian. They want to use the lives of Duan Ling Tian's friends and family to force Duan Ling Tian to come to them." The young man ignored the group's taunts and continued speaking to himself. People from beyond the realm. What did Duan Ling Tian do? Did he perhaps sleep with the daughter of a leader of an extraterrestrial force, and now they've come to settle the score? That's actually possible. Immediately, the topics of conversation among the drinkers in the restaurant shifted, everyone guessing how Duan Ling Tian had provoked the powerhouses from beyond the realm. Some said Duan Ling Tian had stolen someone's treasure. Some said Duan Ling Tian killed the illegitimate son of an extraterrestrial force, leading to pursuit by that force. There were even more outrageous theories. They said Duan Ling Tian had slept with both the wife and daughter of a leader of an extraterrestrial force, and that leader had personally brought people to hunt him down to the Grand Han Dynasty. They were discussing here, completely unaware that the person in question they were talking about was currently sitting in the lobby of the restaurant. Hearing the discussions filling the restaurant, Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched again and again, as if it couldn't stop. However, in his eyes, a hint of worry was clearly visible. Brother Duan, could it be people from the second-rate force, Cloud Soaring Sect? Feng Tianwu had heard everything just now, and couldn't help but look at Duan Ling Tian, asking curiously. Hard to say. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed, a cold light gleaming within them. Those who wanted to deal with him were not just people from the Cloud Soaring Sect. People from the North Underworld Sect and the Impermanent Sect would also not let him go. Therefore, it was possible that the people who wanted to use the safety of the Crimson Sky Kingdom to lure him were from any of the 3 second-rate forces. There are still 5 days left. If Duan Ling Tian doesn't show up in 5 days, those who want to force him out will start a massacre. At that time, the Crimson Sky Kingdom will run red with blood. The effeminate young man with the strange appearance continued to speak. As he spoke, he somewhat intoxicatedly licked his dry lips with his tongue. That will definitely be an extremely spectacular scene. 5 days. As soon as the young man's words fell, Duan Ling Tian's expression changed drastically. Whoosh. The next moment, Duan Ling Tian vanished from his original spot, reappearing in front of the young man, his hand shooting out like lightning, gripping his neck and lifting him clean off the ground. Who are you? The young man, held by the neck, turned pale and then green, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at the purple-clad young man who had appeared like a ghost before him, effortlessly subduing him with a mere gesture. At this moment, he completely abandoned any thought of resistance. The fact that the other party could subdue him so easily, and that he only realized he was subdued afterwards, showed that the other party's strength was far beyond his own. If he stubbornly resisted, he might even anger the other party. If the other party, in a fit of rage, killed him, he would truly have nowhere to cry on the road to the underworld. The young man's 2 companions also changed their expressions, realizing Duan Ling Tian's terrifying power. They retreated to a distance, fearing that Duan Ling Tian would attack them. Who am I? Duan Ling Tian sneered, then scanned the entire restaurant, his gaze sweeping over the group of drinkers, and said word by word, I am the person you were just discussing. Whoosh. As soon as Duan Ling Tian's words fell, it was as if a stone had stirred up 1,000 ripples, and the entire restaurant erupted in an uproar. He is Duan Ling Tian. I knew it. When did our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom produce such a terrifying young powerhouse? I am at least a void-prying stage first-level martial artist, yet I couldn't even catch his movements. That idiot Duan Ling Tian is choking. He just said something about the Crimson Sky Kingdom running red with blood would be an extremely spectacular scene. Most of the customers in the restaurant gloated as they watched the young man, whose neck was grasped by Duan Ling Tian, being lifted. In their eyes, daring to say in front of Duan Ling Tian that the Crimson Sky Kingdom would become a river of blood was going to be an extremely exciting scene. This effeminate young man was simply courting death. What? As soon as the young man heard Duan Ling Tian reveal his identity, his face already changed. Now, the waves of gloating voices entering his ears struck him like lightning. It took him a long while to recover, and he looked at the purple-clad young man who was gripping his neck and lifting him up with fear in his eyes. If, at first, he didn't understand why the purple-clad young man was targeting him like this, now he completely understood. All of this was because of his disrespectful remarks about the Crimson Sky Kingdom. And the young man in front of him was from the Crimson Sky Kingdom, someone who had emerged from the Crimson Sky Kingdom, overcome all obstacles, and before the age of 30, was recognized as the #1 talent among the younger generation of the Dahan dynasty. You are Duan Ling Tian. The young man's voice was still effeminate, but now, besides being effeminate, it also contained a hint of terror, a terror that arose when facing Duan Ling Tian. You just said, in 5 days, if I don't appear before those who want to attack the Crimson Sky Kingdom, they will attack the Crimson Sky Kingdom? Duan Ling Tian's gaze was like a knife, staring at the young man in front of him, and he asked in a deep voice. If Duan Ling Tian's gaze could kill, at this moment, the young man would have already died. As Duan Ling Tian spoke, everyone, including Feng Tianwu, turned their gazes to the young man who was being lifted by Duan Ling Tian, his neck in a chokehold. They were equally curious about this point. Yes, yes. The young man, whose neck was clutched by Duan Ling Tian, was terrified that Duan Ling Tian might accidentally use too much force and choke him to death, so he replied without any hesitation. Tell me everything you know. Unbeknownst to anyone, Duan Ling Tian's expression had returned to calm, and he spoke unhurriedly. However, Duan Ling Tian's calmness, in the eyes of the young man he was holding by the neck, seemed like the calm before a storm. Unbeknownst to him, his forehead was covered in cold sweat, his cheeks trembled, and his eyes were filled with extreme fear. Immediately after, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the young man with the sinister appearance and effeminate voice began to reveal everything he knew without reservation, including why he knew all this. It turned out he had learned it recently from a distant relative who came from the Blackrock Empire. 2 months ago, those people arrived in the Crimson Sky Kingdom, intending to force me out by threatening the Crimson Sky Kingdom's safety. The Dahan dynasty and the Blackrock Empire have long spread the news that those people want to force me out by using the Crimson Sky Kingdom. 2 months ago, those people declared that they would only give me 2 months, and if I didn't appear after 2 months, they would destroy the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Ling Tian's face grew increasingly somber. He never expected that. The existence, seemingly one of the 3 second-rate forces from the northern desert, had already found the Dahan dynasty and the Crimson Sky Kingdom 2 months ago. A dignified outer realm second-rate force, acting so despicable, using a group of weaklings as leverage to coerce me into coming out. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered with a cold light, and waves of intimidating killing intent emanated from him. At this moment, he seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty Azura, ready to harvest lives at any moment. For a time, the group of customers in the restaurant, except for Feng Tianwu and the young man whose neck he was holding, all retreated 3 paces, looking at Duan Ling Tian from a distance with panic in their eyes. They were truly worried that Duan Ling Tian would suddenly lash out at them. Perhaps Duan Ling Tian was younger than them. But Duan Ling Tian's combat power was far beyond what his age suggested, enough to instill fear in them from the bottom of their hearts. Are you kidding me? As early as 2 years ago, Duan Ling Tian single-handedly eliminated the 3 sect masters of the Azure Forest 3 sects, making the Azure Forest 3 sects a part of history. Not to mention how much Duan Ling Tian's strength must have grown after 2 years. Even the Duan Ling Tian from 2 years ago was far from someone they could deal with. Duan Ling Tian, I've told you everything. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Please, please. The young man, realizing the danger and his face turning incredibly pale, gasped for breath and pleaded with Duan Ling Tian for mercy. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian finally came back to his senses and looked at the young man, who was still begging for mercy with his neck in a chokehold, his gaze utterly cold. Some words, once spoken, come with a price. Duan Ling Tian spoke faintly, his tone calm, as if devoid of any emotion. Yet, everyone present could still discern anger in Duan Ling Tian's words. No. Just as the young man's pupils constricted and his face changed dramatically, Duan Ling Tian's hand, gripping the young man, suddenly released him. Immediately after, he struck like lightning, a palm sweeping out as if divinely aided, landing on the young man's lower abdomen. Bang! Before the young man could stabilize himself, he was sent flying by Duan Ling Tian's palm, crashing heavily against the wall on one side of the restaurant. Wah! As the young man, covered in blood, slid down the wall, his face flushed, and he spat out a large mouthful of clotted blood. My elemental energy, my elemental energy. You're so cruel, you're so cruel. You actually crippled my Dantian. After a moment of stunned blankness, the young man reacted, looking at Duan Ling Tian as if he were a devil, and let out a shrill roar. The group of onlookers changed their expressions upon hearing this, looking at Duan Ling Tian with horror in their eyes. In this world where martial arts reign supreme and strength is revered, crippling someone's cultivation, to a certain extent, causes more pain to the person involved than killing them. This is the price for your loose tongue. Duan Ling Tian's tone was cold, and he never looked at the young man again. Tianwu, let's go. Without even having time to eat, Duan Ling Tian called out to Feng Tianwu and then vanished into thin air before the eyes of the customers. Of course, he didn't truly vanish into thin air, but his speed was so fast that the customers in the restaurant could barely perceive it. At the same time, the group of customers in the restaurant only felt a flash of red light before their eyes, and the red-clad masked woman who had been sitting with Duan Ling Tian also vanished into thin air. So fast. Soon, someone couldn't help but exclaim in shock, their face filled with awe. After 2 years, Duan Ling Tian's strength has probably broken through to the void-prying stage. Someone said, guessing. His words were met with approval from most people. It's just a pity that someone got into trouble. Not only did he speak ill of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, but he also dared to do so in front of Duan Ling Tian. Exactly. Doesn't he know that the Crimson Sky Kingdom is Duan Ling Tian's hometown? Perhaps he never dreamed that when he was looking forward to the Crimson Sky Kingdom becoming a river of blood and speaking of it, Duan Ling Tian was right beside him. The sarcastic discussions of the customers in the restaurant reached the ears of the young man, who had just been helped up by his 2 companions. Wah! In an instant, he was so enraged that he spat out another mouthful of clotted blood. Then his vision went black, and he fainted. Duan Ling Tian was naturally unaware of what happened in the restaurant. After leaving the restaurant, he left the small city and headed straight towards the Crimson Sky Kingdom. A figure, like a streak of flame, swept across the sky, following Duan Ling Tian like a shadow, and soon walked side by side with him. Brother Duan, are you returning to the Crimson Sky Kingdom now? Feng Tianwu had once returned to the Crimson Sky Kingdom with Duan Ling Tian, so she could easily tell that Duan Ling Tian was heading back in the direction of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Ling Tian did not deny it, and there was a hint of gloom between his brows. Crimson Sky Kingdom. That was his hometown in this life, and its importance in his heart was no less than that of Earth, where he lived in his previous life. Although his parents had already left the Crimson Sky Kingdom, there were still many people he cared about in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Friends and family. In his previous life, they were out of reach. In this life, they were within his grasp. No matter what, I will absolutely not let them suffer because of me. Otherwise, I will never find peace in this life. At this moment, familiar figures flashed through Duan Ling Tian's mind. Xiao Yu, Xiao Sun, Tian Hu Lixian, and a group of elders who had helped him a lot back then. If the Crimson Sky Kingdom truly became a river of blood because of him, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Therefore, he made a decision without any hesitation, a decision to know there are tigers in the mountain, but still go towards the Tiger Mountain. Duan Ling Tian could not predict the outcome of this decision for now, but he knew that this decision would certainly be fraught with danger. I just hope that at the critical moment, the demon sealing tablet doesn't fail me. Duan Ling Tian thought silently to himself. He had already made a crazy decision. At the critical moment, he would not hesitate to use the demon sealing tablet to kill the invaders from the second-rate force. However, as this thought arose, he felt a little uncertain. He recalled everything that happened before he was demonized by the demon sealing tablet and single-handedly killed the 6 void-prying stage elders of Tsangwolf Fort. He remembered. At that time, TMU died blocking an attack from a Tsangwolf Fort elder for him, which completely enraged him. However, despite his anger, with his strength at the time, let alone avenging TMU, even self-preservation was a problem. At that critical moment, Duan Ling Tian discovered the unusual movement of the demon sealing tablet within his spatial ring. When his consciousness touched the demon sealing tablet inside his spatial ring, he seemed to hear a voice in his ear, a voice full of temptation, a voice originating from the demon sealing tablet. Let me out. I can give you infinite power. Duan Ling Tian still remembered that voice clearly. It was because of that voice that he took out the demon sealing tablet, and an extremely strange black power emerged from the demon sealing tablet. When his hand touched the demon sealing tablet, the black power began to merge into his body and even into his soul. Subsequently, his consciousness was suppressed, and his entire being was demonized.